The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, May 26th, and I'm Caroline Bailey, Professional Development Coordinator for the Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to the first session of our LTSS Maryland Lunch and Learn series. Today's session is an introduction to the LTSS Maryland DDA module. Before I begin, I would like to go over a few things about the webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. There are two options for listening to the webinar by computer and by phone. If you are having trouble hearing, you may want to switch by clicking on the appropriate button on the webinar panel. There is one handout for this webinar, which can be found in the handout section of your control panel, and we will be taking breaks to answer questions throughout the presentation. So please enter any questions you may have into the question box on your webinar panel. The presentation will be recorded and will be available on DDA's LTSS Maryland webpage. Now I'd like to introduce Leslie Stuziak, DDA's Statewide Director of Provider Services.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon rather. Glad everyone could join us for this first of four Lunch and Learn series related to LTSS Maryland. As Caroline said, we are going to take pauses throughout the presentations because we want this to be more of a dialogue type of format. So please enter them as they come up, as questions come up for you in the question box. Other than that, I think you're in for a great hour of discussion, and I'm going to hand it over to Molly Mara, who is the Director of the Office of Medicaid Provider Services, or MPS.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. So happy to be here with everyone today for the first Lunch and Learn in the series. And I'm going to talk about Medicaid and LTSS Maryland, kind of our past, present, and future. And we have a lot of members of our team here today that will all kind of switch off who's on camera so you can get to see us and hear from a whole lot of folks on the team. So we can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of who's going to be here from our team, I'm Molly Mara. You're going to hear from Eric Saber. He's Deputy Director for the LTSS Maryland Program Management Office. Joey Walburn, our LTSS Maryland Program Integration Manager. Jesse Song, our Health Policy and Data Chief. Joseph Sand, who's our Billing Support Supervisor, and Brianna Shaughnessy, who's one of our Health Policy Analysts and has done a lot of work with DDA. So a lot of folks here, we just think it's good to start connecting names with faces. They're all integral members of the team, and we wanted to have it not just be me and Eric talking today, but have you get to know our behind-the-scenes team. They're great to work with, and many of you, I think, know them already. So we can go to our next slide. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about Medicaid provider services. We know the DDA providers are a little bit familiar with Medicaid, but we're going to talk about kind of where we sit in the Medicaid organization and how we relate to our sister agency, DDA. We'll talk a little bit about LTSS Maryland background and kind of how it's come along over the years. And then our recent operations work group that we've gotten going with many providers in the state. And then we're going to do an overview of fee-for-service billing. And we'll take Q&As in between some of these bullets here, and then talk about training and resources. One of the things the team does really well is they're very direct users of the system themselves. They're very involved in changes and new additions to the system. And so they've really developed a great skill of putting together good training and resources for our providers and system users over the years. So they'll talk more about that. Next slide, please. So the Department of Health is a really big organization, and I'm sure this slide looks really small on your screen, but I just wanted to give you a sense of how Medicaid, where we sit in relation to the Developmental Disabilities Administration. So there are 5 major areas within MDH: public health, DDA, behavioral health, health care financing, and Medicaid and operations, along with these many other support groups on top. But we are, my team is under the other blue area under Steve Hsu, and you can go to the next slide there. And then within Medicaid, there are 5 major areas: eligibility, provider services, medical benefits management, pharmacy services, and long-term services and supports. And we are one of those 5 major areas, and Eric's team sits within that area. And then the next slide kind of takes you further drill down of provider services itself. So these are the 4 areas that I manage directly. So, and you'll probably interact at some point, if you haven't already, with the 2 that have the stars next to them, the LTSS Maryland Program Management Office, which Eric oversees, the provider enrollment team. As many of you have used our ePrep system, and that's also an area that I manage. We have our provider policy and compliance team that handles a lot of our audits and regulations, and then a provider relations team that works with a lot of our providers, not necessarily using the LTSS Maryland system, but providers who have questions about billing, claims payment. They help a lot of hospitals, physicians' offices, etc. And that is my kind of quick intro of where we sit, and I'm going to pass it over now to Eric Saber.
Thank you, Molly. I apologize I cannot be on camera. It's some technical issues, but I am on the phone here with you. I'm hoping I'm on slide 7 of the LTSS Maryland Program Management Office. So my office sits within Molly Medicaid Provider Services, and we have three main functions. The first function is to a lot of contract management, contract monitoring. So the LTSS Maryland system as a whole is custom developed for the state of Maryland. It's designed by all of our program staff and intended and used by all of our program staff. So what you're getting here is managed by us and for us, which is great because we can customize as we need to make it fit for our programs, which we've done over a long period of time at this point. So we manage the multiple vendors that support the system, both from a development and also an operations standpoint. Our team also is very heavily embedded in the development process, which means that when the system needs to be changed, we are there to support the end users in making that appropriate change. So it's not a if you end up with a system need that is not currently addressed within the system, those types of items come to my team and to the DDA team, and we help triage and get you to the right solution. So my team does a lot of the work on the development lifecycle, and we really try to engage the user who wants to change with the entire process, from the development to the testing to seeing it go live. We've worked extensively with the DDA programs staff over the years to design the functionality you see or will see in LTSS Maryland to fit those needs. And we do ongoing development to support those. And we'll talk a little bit more about the ongoing development. And the third part of my office is the provider portal billing and exceptions triaging. So there's 2 main segments within LTSS Maryland. One is focused on case management, and one is focused on provider billing, the area in which most of you all will be involved in the near future, if not already. And that is really collecting services that you've provided and submitting claims for them, making sure that they are paid. And that's what my team does and supports today. And also looking at any potential issues that arise prior to that payment. We help resolve issues so that claims do get paid as fast as possible. We go next slide. So LTSS Maryland, the beginning. We started out of a legislative mandate in about 2009, House Bill 113. There's a link there. You can kind of get a brief history of where we were about 13 years ago and what the legislature had told MDH to do at that time. Summary of it really is here. Basically, is to manage HCBS more efficiently, manage it better, reduce duplication of services, ensure we have consistent assessments and policies, integrate as much as we can. A lot of our participants are in multiple programs, and our ability to keep track of them, ensuring that they are receiving quality services are authorized, and that we're paying correctly and timely, were all areas in which the state at the time was having issues. This program, the LTSS Maryland system, and several other programs came out of this recommendations. And one of the other areas that at the time, in 2009, was to look at this new thing called the Affordable Care Act and other CMS initiatives and implement them, get on board and see what we can make work for the state of Maryland. And we were able to do a number of those things. Can you go to the next slide, please? So we've come a long way in the past 13 years. Some of the things that they told us to do, we did. So the Community First Choice Program and the Balancing Incentive Program, both parts of the Affordable Care Act, that brought an enhanced match to the state of Maryland and a large sum of money in an effort to essentially deinstitutionalize many of the services and some of the Medicaid waiver programs. We successfully implemented both of those, and we've seen a tremendous increase in the number of participants being served on the Community First Choice Program and the personal care side and the Office of Long-Term Services and Supports. We've been able to implement standardized medical assessments for many of our programs that help us both manage the health and welfare of a lot of the participants and ensure that they're getting the services that they need based on their needs. We've been able to, one of the areas which we struggled with prior to having a coordinated system was to develop plans in a consistent manner and be able to track quality of those plans and track the services that people were getting, and also to be able to submit those claims and pay them timely. At the time, prior to the system doing those claims submission, many of this process was manual. It was paper, and being able to pay providers took weeks, if not months, to be able to process those manually. The process that's set up in LTSSMaryland does that in an automated fashion. So as soon as you submit a service, that immediately starts the process to get the claim started. There's no one in the middle of that process unless there's an issue. And also setting consistent rates and ensuring we don't duplicate services. Since I mentioned a lot of the programs previously had offered a similar service package, but had various different rates and policies within not just LTSSMaryland, but within the greater Medicaid. We were able to coordinate that much better, revise our regulation, revise our waiver application, and just simply do things better. And the system has been a key component of a lot of these initiatives. And one more slide, please. And this is the timeline. LTSSMaryland first launched in 2013, and we've been live ever since. We've expanded every year to 2 years with a major new program. So we started off with some of the non-DDA programs, the Community Options Waiver, Community First Choice, the Medical Assistance Personal Care Program, and also our electronic visit verification system, the IFAS Clock In, Clock Out, that some of you may be using already. We expanded over the years to serve almost all of our waivers at this point. Later this year is kind of the culmination of the model waiver for fragile children onboarding. So that program, the management and the billing for those programs will become part of LTSSMaryland by the end of this year. And basically seeing at the end of a 10-year project, almost all of Medicaid HCBS become part of one system that can coordinate around a participant, which is something that was one of the driving forces behind doing this application, was to have a system that we can focus around a participant and understand make sure we manage their eligibility, their health through medical assessments, their services through plans of care, person-centered plans, and be able to authorize and pay for services all in one place. So it's been incredibly successful to add all these programs and really find ourselves in a very good position to be able to use a lot of the data we've collected over the years and improve the lives of a lot of our participants and streamline a lot of the processes and manual processes for our providers related to getting plans approved and paying providers. So I moved through the kind of background and history of the program, where we're at today. Looking forward to moving forward with new programs. This is our moment to pause for any questions. I'm not sure if there's anything in queue for us to answer. I'll defer to Molly or Leslie.
There's no questions at this time.
Yeah, we just want to pause here, and if folks do have any questions about history or where we are in the organization, how we relate to anybody else, we're happy to take those questions at this time. So maybe we'll just give a few seconds, see if any questions come in. And if not, that's fine too.
That's fine. The meat of the presentation is coming up, so hopefully we have get some juices going for some questions here. Sorry, you with me?
We are. We're on the next slide there, the PMO slide. Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, a little bit more about us. You'll get to talk to my team in a moment, and right now we've been in charge of everything I mentioned before for almost a decade now, and we're very lucky to have a team that's been with us for a long time. So we have a very experienced group that have been working through various LTSSMaryland developments and implementations for a long time, and they are ready to work on DDA. Our staff is currently around 15, but that is increasing to close to 20 in the next month or two. Looking forward to adding some new people on that are going to be focused on helping with DDA, and in particular the provider portal and billing and exceptions triaging. We're expanding to be able to serve this group better. We've currently aligned ourselves already with the early adopter groups and the pilots to be very much engaged in that process, and have had a lot of success working through a lot of successes and working through any issues that may have arisen over time. So when new groups come on board, we have a very efficient and ironed out workflow for us. So we have a series of policy analysts, project managers, and business analysts to help us do the development, understand the policies, implement the policies. And we also have we've been working with claims and other reporting within LTSS for a long time. So we have specialized in a lot of these areas, and as we expand our team, we'll become stronger and able to handle the expansion of the system accordingly. We go to the next slide. So LTSSMaryland is a custom built. So we are continuing to build it as we see fit. So as new functionality is necessary or changes are necessary, we work with all of the programs to ensure that we get them done and done right. So we have a development process which we meet with all of our colleagues in other departments, as well as many providers and different work groups, to ensure that we know what's going on with the application and what's working, what's not, and we have a plan of action if there's any issues related to it. So we rely on DDA in a lot of instances to help us prioritize, and then we work through the requirements, the testing, and the implementation of each change. We do a announcement monthly to make sure that all of our end users are fully aware of any outages and aware of any changes to the system that may be coming up. We do announce defects within the application, as well as any new functionality. For defects, we manage defects by criticality. We do have a time frame, so if something comes up, we do aim to resolve them quickly, and based on whether or not the issue is related to a payment or participant services. Those usually end up with the highest criticality, and we aim to resolve those within the next release, if not sooner than that. So we do prioritize those critical items. And since the system is custom built, we do rely a lot on our end users to help us improve it. There's a couple ways to contact the department to help us make those improvements. One is actually within the system. You can submit a feedback item on any given page. That helps us identify where an issue may be or where new functionality should exist, or through our help desk. They're there to help either walk through things that may be defects or may not be working the way you expect it to, or to simply help you get through a certain process that you may be unfamiliar with. We have been able to keep the system uptime and availability very high. We strive for 24/7, 365 availability throughout the year. We do take a planned outage approximately once a month for new functionality and any other enhancements or fixes. We have reduced any sort of outage windows significantly, and the system is running as we would expect it from day to day. Again, so for application development, we do rely a lot on you all to help us. We've gotten a lot of great feedback. We work with all of our providers and our agencies to make sure that we're doing the best work we can for you all, and encourage you to stay proactive in this process and be involved in any way you can with the various work groups or just even submitting feedback items. Molly, I'll turn it over to you to discuss a little bit about those work groups.
Great. So we can go to the next slide, please. So kind of to that effect, wanting feedback from our end users, in January of this year, the previous DDA's LTSS Maryland technical work group, we reconstituted that to this primary work group that focuses on LTSS Maryland operations and implementation. And the current membership is 14 members that were in the previous technical work group and several new members as well. And it consists of, with a range of key stakeholders from providers to CCS agencies, the ARC, early adopters, and eventually even an FMS provider too. And so we shared this list with you today. I'm not going to read through all of them, but just so you can take a look and see who your peers are that are on this LTSS Maryland work group. And I think the goal is really that you should bring your questions to them, issues and ideas, certainly use the tools that Eric mentioned, but also this is a good escalation path for issues that you want kind of broader discussion. If you have any peers on this work group, anyone from your organizations, please feel free to send any issues up to them and they can bring them to this work group for further discussion. And next slide. And so then this is just to show there's not just our work group for LTSS Maryland operations. There's kind of a whole network of work groups trying to keep DDA providers connected to the changes that are underway. So there's an annual rate review advisory group. There's an early adopters work group. There's this STAN OLTSS DDA mod monthly and quarterly meetings. So and then also our MDH policy and training teams that are meeting on a regular basis. And so some of the issues that might come up in one group might be better suited to be addressed in a more robust way in another, and we're trying to stay very connected internally and make sure we pass those items to the appropriate team for follow-up. Next slide. And the mission, this just goes through for our particular work group that Eric and my teams are really involved in. This just goes through the goals for the work group here. So let me just make this a little bigger on my side. So we're trying to determine LTSS Maryland and DDA operational areas to troubleshoot and identify prioritization for the LTSS Maryland team. So based on feedback from all of you, there might be something we maybe think is a big deal, but it's not really impacting your workflow and vice versa. Those are the types of items we hope come up in this group. We want to share ideas for innovation and address proposed solutions for LTSS Maryland and DDA module improvements, enhancements, and efficiencies. And then as needed, as I just mentioned, we want to refer and track operational areas to other internal or external work groups and MDH teams to really strengthen our policy, practice, and training needs for our stakeholders. And so that's what's been underway. We're going strong with those meetings every few weeks and making good progress there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to someone you haven't heard from yet today, Joey Walburn, and Joey's going to take over the next few slides. Thanks, Joey.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, Joey Walburn. I work with our LTSS Maryland team. I'm one of the managers that have been supporting several projects. So while Molly talked about a little bit about the LTSS Maryland DDA work group, I wanted to use this slide to dive into two other work groups that we have ongoing right now. First, our EVV provider work group, where we've mixed it up a little bit and brought in some community options CFC providers that work with our EVV system alongside the DDA providers to work with us and talk about some of their current issues. And then also we have a DDA CCS reports work group where we've been working with some of the CCS agencies to discuss some of the reporting needs and how we can address them. And so this slide is a little bit of a snapshot of some of the work that we've been doing with them. And really just to show that we focused a lot of our conversations on specific functionality in the LTSS Maryland system. And so we've been using our time with these groups to talk through some of the big topics that providers have brought to us, some of the improvements that they would like to see, and discuss how we can address those in the system. And begin talking about some of the solutions that would really get to the core of their issues. Next slide. And so with our development that comes from these work groups or otherwise, we did want to highlight how all of the providers are able to access the information on what those development items are. And so every month we put out our LTSS Maryland monthly spotlight. And so this identifies all of the system updates that go into each of our releases every month. And our team puts that together with a pretty high level view of what those changes entail. That includes new functionality that we're releasing, as well as any defect fixes or other minor items that we're putting out. So that all the providers can stay informed on why we're doing the maintenance every month. And so one of the things that we do with these spotlights, we send it out by email, but also we post it on our LTSS Maryland training site. So that's a webpage that's hosted on the Maryland Department of Health website. And we maintain that, and every month after we post or send around our monthly spotlight, we post it there. So any folks who don't get that email or aren't able to find it, you're able to access the archive there for any of the past month releases that we've done. And next slide. So here, I think we can stop again for questions. Just going to leave that open for folks.
We do have a couple questions that have come through. The first one being, for those of us not on LTSS yet, how much longer do we have before conversion?
So I can try to take this question. I think, a lot depends on things going on this summer. So let me I have a couple thoughts on this one. I think, there's some groups of providers that are going to start using LTSS Maryland. I know, starting next week, and I think a few other batches in kind of like July, August, and maybe September. Leslie, you probably can speak to that too. But I think, after that, the goal is really to take a pause and look at where we are and with these work groups kind of evaluate what have we learned, what are the training needs, did we address all the training needs for the providers that are in, and then to kind of work through with DDA and these stakeholder groups what comes beyond that September timeframe. So I think there'll be a pause after that, and then I think there's not like a set date in mind for, you know, all providers need to be in by X date, by June of this year, by July of that year. I think that's what we're working through as a team. I don't know if Leslie, you have any other thoughts on that, or Patricia, others who are on?
Yeah, but Molly's exactly right. We don't have, you know, a hard deadline of any sorts for getting everybody moved in. And Molly kind of outlined, you know, the process that we're utilizing. We want to be methodical about this, and we want to do it right. So, you know, working with providers first who have expressed interest in transitioning into LTSS Maryland. And as Molly said, you know, kind of working things out, learning things from those experiences, and then determining where we go from here.
Yeah, I don't think I want to add anything to that. I think the other point is that we are going to take a pause just to gather all the lessons learned and how do we update any of the tools and the resources that we have available for the providers.
Okay, the next question is, for individuals still funded through PCIS2, but also receiving a DSA and LTSS, do the cost detail and projected services on the DSAT form need to, quote, align? For example, if a person is currently in day but wants to move towards obtaining a job in the community as a projected service in the year to come, can services be stacked so that we request day funding on the cost detail, but the person can also obtain job development as a projected service in the coming year on the DSAT?
So that one, I'm not sure that I can answer. Where I am in the organization and project, I don't know if my team or Patricia, that might be something you could speak to a bit more.
Sure, yes, I can speak to that one. This one is specifically a couple of things I would say is if you're going into the LTSS system within the year that you're planning this, then you could do the stacking and braiding because it's a fee for service, and then you can do 15-minute increments on those services. If you're going to stay, and we're still in PCIS2, I would recommend, because you cannot provide the same service at the same time, you can still provide those services in the different days. So I would definitely get together with either your CCS or the regional office to walk you through that. Because as long as you're in PCIS2 system, we want to make sure that service you cannot bill and write for the same day, and those services are on a daily, the way we pay is for a daily rate. So I'm happy to discuss this offline further with you if you like additional information.
Thank you, Patricia. They're coming in fast and furious now. Okay, so how can new providers apply to begin billing in LTSS? I can take this one, and Patricia, if you want to piggyback or if I missed anything. If you are interested in beginning billing in LTSS, I would encourage you to reach out to your regional office, your regional director, and they will have a conversation with you to kind of determine your level of readiness and kind of go from there. Patricia, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, I would just say that it's just really good if you just let your regional director know and express your interest. That way we can know, and we have some really good statistics of how many providers are either have touched or are right now in LTSS, and we have a little over 60-something providers that are not in any using LTSS services right now for billing for any of the services. So if you are interested, just make sure that your regional directors are aware.
Thanks, Patricia. The next question is, what does a pilot group look like? Will there be any technical training? Or is it just up to us to get our pilot started? Make sure you join us for the next Lunch and Learn series on June 9th. We are going to be talking about all things related to this very question. We have a very structured and methodical approach to helping providers get up and ready to roll to start billing in LTSS. And we have an entire checklist that we work through with providers. You know, everything from making sure that MA numbers are correct in the system, that the proper codes are applied, you know, all the way to PCP readiness. There's a lot of nuances to it. So we definitely are walking with providers, you know, kind of hand in hand every step of the way. So definitely make sure you're at the 6-9 Lunch and Learn series, and we will be going much more detailed into that topic. The next question is there a timeline for opening up EVV so we can use software integration for the EVV system?
Eric, I don't know if your team can answer that or needs a little clarification on that question. And Leslie, I just wanted to say we probably have time to answer this one, and then we should probably keep moving through so we have enough time at the end for questions too. We want to make sure and then we can go through all the ones that have come in as long as we have time. Eric or anyone on the team, do you have thoughts on that question? Maybe you could repeat it one more time, Leslie.
Yes, to repeat it.
Sure, absolutely. Is there a timeline for opening up EVV so we can use software integration for the EVV system?
For EVV, no, at this time we do not have a plan to integrate the non-state EVV solutions.
Perfect, thank you. We can keep moving. We'll save the next few for the next round of questions.
I think Jesse, just want to introduce Jesse Song. He's going to take the next few slides. Thanks, Jesse. He might be having an issue. I think he's still muted by the organizer, he said. Can someone unmute Jesse?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse. I'm another manager with the LTSSMaryland PML team. So I wanted to give a brief overview of how billing works and how LTSSMaryland integrates with the system. So there are numbers of other systems that do bill directly with MMIS, and the way that they do it, you can see on the left-hand side, they either through like e-Medicaid, through the paper forms, they'll submit directly to MMIS, and with that, MMIS will provide a response on claims, it'll evaluate on various things, and then it'll return that response to the provider, and it'll be up to the provider to triage and fix those errors, and then resubmit. So with the LTSSMaryland system, providers will be billing fully inside of that system. They'll be submitting their system, then LTSSMaryland will review any claims that are submitted, and anything that doesn't have an exception for payment will then be generated into like something called an 837 file and eventually sent to MMIS, and then MMIS will process that, and eventually that will get sent to the comptroller. And so this entire process will typically take about 1 to 2 weeks. And then with that, for most payments, that it will turn into payments. There will be some times where there's something called exceptions, and that will be handled within the LTSSMaryland system. So things like ineligible provider or participant, or things related to the participant's plan. And so us as a team, as the LTSSMaryland PML team, we are here to assist you with any of those issues. And as soon as those issues get resolved, that service will get turned into a claim that very night and submitted to MMIS again. So all of this is kind of here to make this as smooth as possible. All right, next slide, please. All right. So like I mentioned on the previous slide, LTSSMaryland will take any of the services that providers input in and turn it into claims. So this applies to any clean claims and things without exceptions. And about 95% of claims don't have any exceptions at first and will be submitted right away. Kind of the remaining 5%, these are essentially the system's early warning saying that this claim, if it were submitted, it's not going to be accepted by MMIS or for some other reasons. So the provider can work with both MDH and DDA and will help you resolve these issues. And because of this exceptions process, the claims that we submit to MMIS have an over 99.9% success rate. So essentially, if we submit a claim, it's going to get paid. And if there is some other issues, we are here to assist, and we do monitor this process very closely. And all right, next slide, please. And I'll turn this over to my colleague, Brianna.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brianna Shaughnessy. I'm a health policy analyst that has worked closely with DDA billing processes and identifying system improvement opportunities. We wanted to take an opportunity to discuss how the claim submission process works in LTSS and how you as a provider can verify that the services actually became paid claims. Next slide, please. After billing entries have been submitted by your agencies to LTSS Maryland, services go through the following process to convert from billing entries to paid claims. They check against various eligibility and PCP requirements once passed, they go to a ready status to prepare to become a claim. When a claim closes from the overnight job at the end of the billing cycle, it then gets sent to MMIS and goes to submitted to MMIS status. After about a week, the MMIS will update LTSS Maryland with the final claim status for Medicaid claims. Meanwhile, if there's somebody who's state funded and the services are state funded, they will convert to their final status once a month at the first of the month for direct submission to DDA for payment. Next slide, please. Well, let's go slightly more into detail on this. Ready is the status once it passed all the exceptions and it's good, it's a clean claim, is the status for community supports, family supports, and community pathways. This is processed nightly. Meanwhile, state funded, it will go to a state payment eligible status once it's a clean claim. When the billing cycle closes once a week for Medicaid and once a month for state funded, they go into a closed status, which means it's fully converted to a claim. Services and Ready will proceed to MMIS once weekly after the billing cycle closes each week. And services, again, state payment will convert on the first of the month for you to go into a separate report in LTSS to download, sign, and send to DDA directly for payment. Next slide. Okay, so once a claim is formed, it must obviously be sent for payment. They're submitted, like I said, once a week. You can check it in eMedicaid on Saturday following the day that it's claimed, if you so desire. However, on the Wednesday after you receive the check, MMIS actually pushes an update to our system, and it will provide the full claim information, and that's your final confirmation of payment. This generally takes about 7 to 13 days from the day that the claim is submitted. And then for state payment, similar deal, but instead of getting a final claim status, it's state payment reported. That is the final stage. And next slide, how you will see it in LTSS Maryland. You'll see it in two places. You can run the remittance advice report for any of the Medicaid services. This will show all the claim information that you need to verify that the services have been paid. And for state payment, you will run the state payment report and you can see all those confirmed. Meanwhile, at the service level, you can search for the services directly, and you're going to see a number of confirming elements in the the service tile under service activity summary, you'll see that it's in a closed status, which is the steps 1 and 2 that I discussed earlier. And then the steps 3 and 4, you'll see the claim details section updated. You'll see that the claim is paid. You'll see whether it's an original or an adjustment. You will see what prop code. And further down underneath that red box, you'll see the net paid, total paid. You have the date it was paid, the remittance advice number that it was assigned to, and other such critical information so that you can verify at the end of the day that you've been paid for that service completely. And other than that, that is the process, but I'm going to turn this over to Joseph Sant, our billing support supervisor.
Thanks, Brianna. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Brianna said, my name is Joseph Sand. I'm billing support supervisor. A lot of you have probably that are in the system and working in our system have probably interacted with our team. We're often go by the ISS team or the ISS help desk, generally how we would represent ourselves. So we offer a lot of provider assistance, mostly around billing reports, billing issues or any kind of report issues. And you can contact us through our email address usually at mdh.isshelp@maryland.gov. We focus primarily on billing or exceptions resolution. And so that's kind of the first place that most folks stop when they're trying to get something resolved in our system. We offer, email resolution, or in cases where absolutely needed, we can set up some time to talk to you all one-on-one to go over specific instances or specific cases that you're having issues with. So kind of as we're growing and expanding, like Eric said earlier, we are expanding our team to increase to an additional 6 people. Those folks are going to be focusing primarily on, addressing a lot of the DDA issues that come up in DDA specific problems. Oh, sorry, next slide, please. Sorry, this is the slide we should be on. And so in addition to just our standard, one-on-one communication, we also offer a lot of trainings, and we're kind of working on getting some trainings up and running. And so the first place, the first resource that providers should look at is the LTSSMaryland playbook. And those have a lot of identities. You can identify your support resources there. And which is a link is on this slide here. In addition to that, we are offering quarterly trainings that focus in on very specific areas where we've noticed folks are probably having some more difficulties or some areas of interest. A lot of this comes from the other work groups that people have have been part of. And so you can see on the slide here, this is kind of our general outline of how we are planning on rolling these out. We have already done the reports webinar last August for some of you that have been here. We are planning on the next one coming up is going to be the provider portal overview, kind of getting to understand provider portal and the webinar in the ISS system itself or provider portal system. These are kind of subject to change. We understand that there are some major things that come up over time, one of them being exceptions. So we might see some things added or some things subtracted depending upon the need of the user groups here. So next slide. And many of you are probably familiar with this already, this kind of training calendar. And we'll be integrating our trainings to this calendar so that you can kind of see what is offered from DDA and also from our team as well. Some of these small, more focused down trainings as well. Next slide. In addition to that, we also have a specific page that focuses on this basically dedicated resources around kind of the provider portal system and billing at LTSSMaryland. On this page, we generally focus on things like policy guide, system guides, all the recorded webinars and any kind of FAQs that come up. So if people have frequent issues or frequent problems, I know recently one of them was something along the lines of being able to access Medicaid or resolving certain exceptions. We've posted kind of FAQs there. We also have an addendum section that's kind of things that would be in a guide, but we were either left out or they're new additions. And so that's where those are at. And those can all be found on our health.maryland.gov websites below there. And that's where those would be at. So I guess at this time, next slide. I guess this time we can kind of open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions?
Yes. So the question that I want to direct to Joseph Sand, or excuse me, yes, Joseph Sand or Joseph Walburn. So we've had a few questions about the app, and to kind of summarize, folks just really want to hear more about it.
Sure, I can talk about that a bit. I guess it's good timing because I think either today or tomorrow we're planning on sending out a message about the app just to get folks up to speed on where we are with it. But the LTSS Maryland EVV app is something we've been working on for the last few months. And with our EVV work group that I mentioned earlier, this is one of the big topics that we focused on since we're hoping to have an app available towards the end of the year. And so with this work group, we've developed a little bit of a pilot program, and some of the providers across our programs are participating, and over the next few months are going to be helping us use the app in the real world and see how it works for their staff, and get us any feedback that they might have, so that we can really focus in on what features and improvements we should prioritize as we look towards releasing this to the wider population. And so this app, we're hoping will be a really big improvement for providers out there. I think it'll be a lot faster than the current telephone process, and a little bit more convenient for some of the staff. And so it's something we're excited about. And we have not kicked off the pilot officially yet. So it's not actually available to any of our pilot providers yet, but next month is the target for starting that out and letting some folks on the ground actually get their hands on it.
Great, thank you very much. Eric, this next one I'm going to direct to you. Will providers begin to use LTSS for incident reports?
We do have that planned in the future. It is not something that is up and running now. It's something we'll need to work with DDA and our partners in LTSS to do development on. It is planned in the future, but no, not at this time.
Great, thank you. Perhaps this one to you as well, Eric. If you are already set up for direct deposit from DDA, do you have to do anything to have payments from LTSS direct deposited?
I may be afraid to answer that. Myself, if you're set up with a comptroller for direct deposit with the current provider number, I believe that should be sufficient. The comptroller is the one you get your checks from. We are merely a submitter of claims. So that is the appropriate process to make sure that your direct deposit is set up for your particular provider number. I'm not sure, Leslie or Molly, if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll say is that it's really important that the information that you have in our ePrep system, especially your pay-to address information, is in line with what the comptroller has. Our systems do kind of a nightly file match, and when something gets out of sync, it kind of hits an error. And so it's just really important to keep those two things in line. I hope that's a little bit helpful.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add is that we want to make sure that providers are set up correctly in the EPIRB system, because when you're in a PCIS2, you have one MA number, and when you come into the LTSS EPIRB system, you have another MA number. So we want to make sure that that correlates. I don't know, Leslie, if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, to kind of summarize, this is one of the readiness kind of checkpoints that we go through when we're working with the providers who are preparing to go live. So we'll definitely talk more about this at the next Lunch and Learn series, but know that it is part of the kind of technical lead up. Okay, Brianna, I have a question for you. When will it start that the state-funded invoices be auto-submitted for payment?
So as far as that goes, that's actually a DDA question. That's not an expected item at the moment. I agree that that's something that would be nice to have, but at the moment you will have to download it as an Excel file and email it directly.
I'll just note that LTSS is not set up to adjudicate claims. So as far as paying out or anything, we are a submitter. So I forgot to mention that we can create that report. DDA has a process for making that payment. We'll defer to DDA though for any additional comments on it.
Thank you both. That is all of the questions that we have come through, and I know we only have 3 minutes left. So we want to make sure that you all will come to each Lunch and Learn session that is going to be part of this series. The next one will be, again, as I said earlier, on June 9th, same time, 12 o'clock. And at that next one, we'll be going over your resources for readiness. And so that'll be another really great one to attend. And then there will be 2 more following that series. So please make sure to attend, and please make sure to bring your questions, and we will answer them and get you more knowledgeable on this process. And thank you so much to the MPS team for presenting today and answering questions. This was really, really helpful, and I think, you know, it was a good way for providers to really kind of see how the system works and what you all do from a higher level. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you to all of our presenters today for this information. This will conclude our first LTSS Maryland Lunch and Learn session. On behalf of the Developmental Disabilities Administration, we thank you for your participation in this session. Have a great day.